Maya. Welcome back to the SPRTER Podcast, and that's our second try. Thanks for making it.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully now this time we're having storms, but my internet shouldn't cut out.
All right.
Hopefully it doesn't.
Okay, I've heard that there are some storms scheduled in Philadelphia, so later on. So hopefully we'll make it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the SPRTER Podcast. And I was just telling our audience that I'm super excited to have you on board. Just to give everyone a little bit of an introduction. So Maya is a former pro golfer. He's competed on the SPRTER Tour in the professional days and was a 3 times NCAA All-American. And she's now at UPenn. She's also an LGBTQ plus athlete activist and has founded the Queer Asian Social Club and is now a total public interest scholar at University of Pennsylvania Law School. So talent and brains. Welcome, Maya, to the SPRTER Podcast.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Also want to mention that Maya's got her experience store set up on the SPRTER app, so anyone is interested to learning more, improving their golf swing or engaging with Maya, head over to the SPRTER app and check it out there. So let's get started with some questions on your career, and we touched on that briefly the last time, that how you got started with golf and what made you become hooked to golf, to just become a professional.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, when I was little, all of my role models, my big brother-like role models, all played sports. And I remember being like, wait, I just want to be exactly like them, as all little kids tend to do with our role models. So I ended up playing like a lot of sports. I played softball, which was essentially just me sitting in the outfield picking flowers. I played soccer, which I loved, tennis. I swam competitively. And then I took up golf when I was 3 because I saw my dad hitting balls and I was like, wait, he's just smashing the crap out of golf balls? That sounds like fun. I want to do the same thing. And I remember like very distinctly the golf course that we were part of is called Riverview Country Club in Redding, California. But like it was one of those driving ranges that has a net at the end of it. So I think it's like 200 yards long, or a little over 200 yards long. There's a tall net at the end. And when I was growing up, my friends and I it was like a challenge to hit it over the net. So like we just wanted to hit the ball as hard as possible and like get up so we're hitting it over the net, which is like a bit of a feat when you're a little kid, because not only is it really far away and you are quite little, so you don't have the swing speed to get up super long distances, but also golf balls on the range don't fly. They're like flighted less, so that you're not hitting into people's houses. So I think like, I'm not sure the exact mechanics behind it. I'm sure somebody listening who's more familiar with golf equipment could tell us. But I know as like kind of a general basis, range golf balls fly about like 10 yards shorter than a normal golf ball. Okay. So it's like combating that. So anyways, a lot of my experiences growing up and playing golf definitely revolved around wanting to hit it over the net. And I remember, I think I was like the first one out of my group of friends who were mostly other like boys. And I was like, haha, I hit it farther than you. But honestly, the reason why I ended up sticking with golf as opposed to the other sports I was playing was because it didn't involve running. And I was like, I'm pretty good at tennis, but it involves running. And I would always get chastised by my coach being like, no, you don't wait for the ball you have to go to the ball. Stop just standing still. And then with swimming, which I loved, I just had like really difficult coaches. So it's like, golf, here it is. And I love I've gone through so many stages of loving the game, which I'm sure many folks who play golf can relate to. very frustrating and also very rewarding. But I think like the first time I really, really fell in love with it was when I got to college, when it no longer kind of had this, I love playing golf, but to a certain extent, it felt like an obligation, like the stepping stone to get into college. And so once I got to college, like on my own in undergrad, experiencing, the debauchery of college. But I also like had this incredible group of teammates where it was like we're all really competitive and we're playing for the love of the game at the same time, because it's like you're never going to be really excellent at whatever you're doing. I think especially in sports, if you don't love playing the game. And that kind of like helped me fall back in love with the sport. And, I was a 3-time All-American, which was amazing. I'm insanely competitive. So I was like, I don't want it to end here. And then I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to turn pro. And yeah, the rest is a history, I guess, even though it was just only a few years ago.
Yeah, that's a great progression in terms of also those ups and downs before college, and that's interesting to hear that it was almost then at one point seems like it felt like a means to get into college, but then rediscovering that love for the game. That's great. Now, when you're talking about hitting the ball far on the range, and you were the first one, and that's a nice stepping stone. But I know with golf, there's always that one shot that is like, this is impossible. And like people talk you out of it, like, you're never going to get this shot. What is that shot that you actually made that was deemed to be impossible?
Okay, I don't know if it's technically impossible, but there was this tournament that we played in in college at Jekyll Island in Georgia, which I believe is where the Treasury first was in the United States. Unclear.
Okay.
Beautiful place, and like amazing golf courses, good food, all around, great time. But with being in Georgia, right, like that part of the country, there are a lot of alligators just like hanging out on the golf course. And me kind of like growing up in California and like being a California girl, I am used to lots of geese, not necessarily alligators.
Different game.
Completely different. But we were playing this tournament, and I remember it was this really tricky par 4 where it was a slight dogleg to the left, and on all down the right side was pretty dense like forest trees. I'm not remembering exactly if it was out of bounds over there, but regardless, you don't want to get stuck in those trees. And then on the left side, going like the length of the dogleg, is a water hazard. And then the entire hole like kind of slopes towards the water hazard. So essentially you're like, okay, I need to like land this perfectly so that I'm not in danger of it rolling down towards the water hazard. Well, I did not place it perfectly. It rolled down towards the water hazard, and I like step up there and I'm like, hey, like I should hit this. Like, it's really important that I make par on this hole because our team is leading and it would be like a huge deal to win this tournament. And so I was like, okay, like I know I'm going to be standing in the water a little bit, but I can get like a clean shot on this. I was like, I'm pretty sure I can get a clean shot on this. So I just literally without thinking, take my shoes off, go in the water. I think I had like 130 yards into the hole. So I like grab like a 9-iron, get all set up, hit the ball. Apparently the entire time I was hitting that shot, there was an alligator like a couple feet right behind me. And so I saw my like parents across the way on the cart path after I hit the shot being like, get the fuck out of there. Like, what are you doing? So that just proves that I'm quite oblivious when I'm on the golf course. The fun thing is that I did actually make par, so I almost died but I did make par, so it was all worth it in the end.
And now it's a great story. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing that you probably, I mean, yeah, certainly not having seen that alligator and that would be definitely a bit different ballgame. That's an interesting and memorable shot. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Before we get into some of the more like denser questions, I ask you to. We have a segment that we call the poll booth. And it's where we basically ask you to settle a few hot debates in a one quick fire round, as in really quick answers to different questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
World Cup versus Super Bowl.
World Cup.
TaylorMade versus Callaway.
Callaway.
NCAA versus professional sport.
Oh, NCAA.
Okay. Country music versus rap.
Country.
Movie or series?
Oh, I love them both. I'm gonna go series. I love to binge watch.
Who doesn't? Dogs or cats?
I'm currently surrounded by both a dog and a cat, but I'm gonna have to go dog.
Okay. Tigers versus DeChambeau.
Tiger, obviously.
Okay. Cardio versus weights.
Weights.
And Mexican versus Italian.
God, I've been craving a burrito, so I'm gonna have to go Mexican.
Okay. I think I'm a pizza guy. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. I kind of felt a little bit bad because Italy has been dominating like all, the Euro Cup, Eurovision. So I'm like, oh no, don't let the Italians hear me. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. As I said, we're gonna get into something a little bit more denser, more meaningful, maybe. Even though Mexican, I can give you that with a burrito. Talking about role models in your career, and who inspired you to get through that thick and thin, as in you said, well, there's an up and down, and what are some of the role models that helped you with looking up during those downtimes where you're like, well, they got through it, I can get through it?
I mean, Tiger, obvious.
Okay.
Tiger, I think for so many of us, it means so many different things and so many important things. And I know for myself, it was like seeing an Asian American, a Black American dominate on tour. And I saw a lot of myself in him, which is not me trying to say I'm exactly like Tiger. Just that there were, his relationship with his mother, what he talked a lot about his spirituality. I think in the mid to late 2000s, I might be getting that wrong. And I remember being like, it was just really resonant. And even though he didn't talk, more on point about race and experiencing, like his experiences on the tour as a person of color, it still, like, the visibility was amazing. And it was just like, this guy is crushing it. Like, it's just, I can't always put into words like how amazing it is. I actually, behind me, I have I can tilt my camera, but I have this flag and that's Tiger's autograph.
Okay.
From the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines from 2019. And I remember being like, oh my God, as a little kid, I never in a million years would have thought that I would get to like shake his hand and get like an autograph, and being like, this is like a big reason why I got into the sport and why I continued with the sport. But other role models for me, like Michelle Wie, I remember, she turned pro when she was like 14. And I just remember her, like, this Asian girl crushing it on tour. And I was like, I too am an Asian girl, like a young Asian girl. I can do that. Like, why can't I do that? And the fact that she went back to, she took some time off from playing to go to school, got a degree in communications, I believe, from Stanford. I was like,
okay.
I just really loved that. Like it kind of fit with the things that I wanted to do. It kind of showed that while being an athlete is really amazing, we're not solely athletes. And here are all these other experiences that we can kind of like infuse with our game. And then also, I have to say, my other big role model, Megan Rapinoe, who is just phenomenal, although definitely a little bit bummed that we lost to Sweden this morning at the Olympics, which I guess ended what was it? It was like since 2019, the US women's national team had won like every game they'd played. Anyways, big nerd about that. But Megan is actually from the same hometown as I am, which,
Okay.
is I'm always, always excited about. But she was one of the first openly gay athletes, professional athletes, to not just be like open and visible, but to also be an incredible advocate and to show that like to use her platform to encourage change and to create an environment of inclusivity. And so when I was struggling a lot with like trying to find my footing and trying to, you know, feel comfortable and feel belonging, combat discrimination in my sport. And when I didn't see other individuals being as open and having conversations about sexual orientation, about gender, about race, it was really, really meaningful to be able to be like, okay, here's this person who's doing that. She may not be in my sport per se, but she is showing that on the professional stage, like you can be like your queerness is not going to impact like your game. And in fact, like it can really being authentically who you are and kind of being in a space that celebrates that, includes that, can, it only makes you a better athlete. It only allows you to kind of reach your potential, or to just be phenomenal in whatever way that is. And as we have seen with Megan Rapinoe, a national treasure. But yeah, those I think are like my big three role models in sport.
That's a great detailed overview as well as in why. I mean, this is
Yeah.
awesome in terms of when you talk about identity creation here, right? As in, like, okay, I'm not just an athlete, I'm so much more, and what I do on the field is part of who I am, but helping to see people that are in that role, that look like me, that are like me, that are showing that, hey, I can do this at the highest level. This is really exciting. Now, obviously, you touched on that briefly. Golf isn't, or has not, probably still isn't the most inclusive and diverse sport. So you are actively doing something against that. You've taken action. You are an activist in a way, right? So what part of golf culture and what sparked that you decided, you know what, I can start a club that fights this, that brings change to the sport?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things. I think golf culture, it's built on a lot of exclusion. I mean, when golf first started, right, the majority of golf courses were male only. Actually, in a really sad way, there's still a lot of private courses in the United States, and I'm betting around the world, that are still male only. And only recently, there was news about a New Jersey private country club that admitted, I think, like two or three women for the first time. So it's kind of like, come on, guys. But yeah, like the culture is there. Like golf, when we think about it, and the sport doesn't really do too much to, like the governing bodies of the sport don't really do too much to change this perception. But when you think about golf, you think about very wealthy, typically white, older, like middle-aged and older men out on the golf course playing. And when you think of the outfits, it's like the trousers, the button, like the polos, the crisp shoes that look like dress shoes. And it's like a very particular image that you look at, that comes to mind when you think of golf. And that image, because it is so specific, it kind of creates this inaccessibility to the sport. Because it's like, I'm sitting here and I'm a queer woman of color. And like every time I tell somebody I used to play golf professionally, like I always follow it up. Yeah, exactly. I always follow it up with a joke where I'm like, yeah, I basically graduated from college and then lived my best retired old white man life. Um, but because that is the image, and because we still see that as being the image, while kind of golf has become a little bit more like athletic and less of like the dress pants ensemble, you have, I think this was definitely started by like Tiger, where, you know, we were seeing golf more as athletes. The clothing is still really specific, right? And I think that in and of itself creates this gendered kind of dynamic where it's like, you know, even if somebody isn't wearing slacks, right, they're still wearing like these performance pants. And they're, you know, on the PGA Tour, you're only allowed to wear pants in tournaments. You can wear shorts during practice rounds, but not during tournament rounds. There are many country clubs that enforce dress code where it's like no jeans, you can wear only specific colored socks, which is insane. And so that it's like for me, like going into the sport, it's like, wait a second, I am not that. Am I like, and everything is telling you that you're supposed to look like that if you want to be a golfer. You're supposed to kind of like adhere to that to be a golfer. And nowhere does that create space for women. And it's really amazing to have like the LPGA Tour and to have more visibility for women's golf. And at the same time, it's still, and like this is where I may get a little bit nerdy and in the weeds, but
Good.
but you know, in women's golf, like the images that you see are very much tailored to a male audience. And I, you know, you can see that in a lot of different sports. An example that comes to mind is the Norwegian volleyball team, the women's volleyball team, which just asked, can we play in, you know, like spandex shorts, because we don't want to wear like these tiny bikinis, right? And the governing body was like, no, not at all. And so it's like a very clear kind of demonstration of like sexualizing with female athletes. And I think in a way in golf, that happens as well, where it's like, how do we focus on the most kind of like marketable to our male audiences? And when I say that, it's not a dig at any athlete. I mean, like, everybody who's dominating out on tour, like everybody who's playing on the LPGA Tour or any of the tours, like they're phenomenal athletes and they deserve to be there. And I think that when media coverage tends to focus only on one specific image of an individual, then it creates kind of this, it emphasizes the culture that this is what you're supposed to look like. You know, like when we think about tennis, right? Like Wimbledon comes to mind. We think about like the whites on white, you know, wearing the hat, like just being very, very specific. Another country club sport over there. So kind of like all of that forms the backbone of the, you know, like the golf culture. And because a lot of the governing bodies aren't doing too much to confront that head on, a lot of the folks that are doing kind of like, I would say, queering in a sense, golf culture are, you know, more like outside brands. It's not necessarily the governing bodies. And so you do see like a lot of really cool brands, you know, fucking with golf culture. And, you know, I think about Macklemore's new brand, Bogey Boys, where all of the clothes kind of are modeled by all different genders, all different like folks who play golf or, you know, want to play golf or whatever it may be. But you still don't see that within the actual governing bodies of the sport. And so when there isn't that, when there aren't conversations about equity and inclusion, and it's almost avoided, or, you know, it's only addressed in response to like a tragedy, then it's not really doing much, because it's like, what about the proactive aspects of it? And so for myself, kind of playing in the absence of all of that, and to a certain degree, there is still an absence, absolutely, to this day. It's hard to kind of look at a future of playing professionally or playing at any level where with certainty you can feel like you belong, and you're not going to have to, in my case, in my experience, where I had to negotiate my identities consistently to feel like I belong, to prove that I belong, despite having the literal talent to show that I did belong. So I mean, like, I think it's a lot of, hey, like, golf, nothing bad is going to happen to the sport if we like change it up a bit, if we like redefine the country club culture, because everybody should get a chance to play this stupid sport.
So, I 100% agree. Now, how could that happen? Obviously, targeting the top, but as you say, in terms of the brands, I think we see a lot of power coming from commercial deals. The Washington football team changed their name because commercial partners threatened to pull out. So that was the catalyst to actually spark the name change and the culture change, and then they started to implement have new people at the top. So do you see that type of pressure? That's what it needed to go through a culture change at the helm, or you say more of a country club groundswell?
I think it's both. I think that at the professional level, it certainly makes a huge difference. My friend and the incredible athlete, golfer, Hailey Davidson just joined, and she is the first trans woman to win a professional golf tournament. She's won 2, actually, because she's a badass. But, I think a lot about experiences that she and I have had, like, on the ground playing golf. Like, even in the mini tours, on the Symetra tour, it's a different environment than the LPGA tour or the PGA tour. Yes, you're playing the same game, you're kind of chasing the same dream, and there's this kind of like separation between it, because more people are paying attention to, like the LPGA and the PGA tours. A lot of people don't realize that there are these other levels there. And so if there's only going to be policies implemented at the top levels, and don't get me wrong, that's very, very important, it's not necessarily guaranteed that it's going to trickle down, because there are a lot of people that could just be like, that's just for the pros. Like, why do we have to change? And so I think it takes both. Like, I think it takes conversations like this, visibility of athletes like on the court, and kind of like a space where we feel like we can talk about these things. And I think that's happening more and more, but it's like a combination of the two. And I think that's also aided by corporate sponsors taking a stand as well. And so far, not many, prominent golf companies have, really taken a stance on gender equity, on LGBTQ equity and inclusion, on racial equity and inclusion. And it tends to be just kind of like, when it is the month to do so, there may be something said. But even then, with Pride just being last month, there really was not much in the world of golf where people were kind of like, where the kind of leading organizational bodies were talking about Pride or celebrating Pride.
So that's what we see in the sport industry, right? As in, it's like, or not just the sport, but in general, the industry is like, let's change our logo background color for a month, but that's about it for the rest. And I think that's certainly something that obviously needs to change. So good on you for being a trailblazer there, and congrats to Hailey D Golf for the win, as well as joining in the changing the culture. I think that's, as we talked earlier in terms of role models, that's what we need, is role models that can provide that for the next generation to like look up and be like, oh wait, they did it, and actually they played pretty well, and you know, like, yeah, they were able to negotiate their identity. So I think that's really exciting to see, and hopefully that I mean, it's not getting worse, so hopefully. It's called the floor effect. You can really only go up when you're at the bottom. So I think that's exciting to see, and we need these trailblazers to really step up. So it's awesome to see you stepping up there, and I will have. I mean, I'm conscious of your time. We try to keep this to about 30-minute segment. I have about 7 segments that we skipped because the conversation was flowing so well. But I have one last question in terms of your next goals. What's on your agenda? I mean, you're not currently playing pro, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you joined UPenn, and what's next? What are your goals?
Oh my God, that's a very good question. So I'm currently in law school, and I came to law school basically because I wanted to learn the language of the law and the language of power to help and to be a part of litigation defending queer and trans athletes, as well as to help with policy formation, which right now there is a huge need for, and a huge importance in creating and pushing forth queer and trans inclusive policies within every level of sport. So that's kind of been my focus. I am entering my last year. So I laughed when you first asked that, because I'm like, yes, I too am questioning what my post-graduation move is going to be. But just working in this space and working in LGBTQ advocacy within sports is incredibly important to me, and something that I want to spend, and I have been really dedicated to spending my career doing. And then in terms of playing golf, I'm getting back into it. My friend, I have a perfect putting mat over there. It's called Perfect Practice Putting Mat. So I've been slowly trying to get my stroke back. But I've been really lucky to meet some incredible people like Hailey, Bradford Wilson, the guys at Group Golf Therapy, who all are kind of like working towards like this inclusion and redefining the sport as one of inclusion and fun. And so it's been really great to fall in love with the sport again and be like, damn, I want to get back to my fighting shape.
That's awesome. And I mean, I asked you earlier what's needed in terms of creating change. I think that's exactly what's needed. A group of trailblazers that are ready to, I don't want to say dismantle the system, but I do want to say dismantle.
Yeah.
Let's dismantle.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's pretty much what is needed. So it's great to see that you're pushing and following your passion there as well, and looking to increase the impact of the change that you're seeking for the sport. So that's absolutely amazing to see and hear. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. This was really insightful to hear your perspective and hear about the intricate details of what we often don't hear from golf. So really appreciate the time you've taken here to join us on the SPRTER Podcast, where we are looking to get insights and knowledge from sporters from around the world. Again, if any of our listeners here, Maya has her experience store open, so anyone wanting to improve your golf swing, I probably need that. And also engage in any different way, head over to the SPRTER experience store. And give her a following on all of the socials. We're going to tag you as well, and this is going to be online on YouTube as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Maya, and let us know how SPRTER can help with any of those initiatives down the road.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun getting to know you guys and the SPRTER family. And thank you so much for having me on and creating this platform for athletes of all different levels from so many different sports to, get to have our voices, our faces, our stories told and heard. So it's awesome.
Those are all awesome stories. So we are super happy to be able to share them. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
evening.
You as
Bye.
well. Bye.